I thoroughly enjoy Sunday morning is talking to new faces with new stories. I have a great one for you today. I have a 34-year-old millennial multi-millionaire, and he got there in some interesting ways. If you follow my channel, you know that I believe most people should focus, 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 become elite at something. And good old Blake Selby says, that is for the old farts, you Gen X people. I am going to do it my way. And it worked out. Blake, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and don't do what I did. I'm just kidding.
Well, Blake, you have a very colorful resume that has led to the status of being a multimillionaire. Why don't you summarize who is Blake, what got you to where you are today, and we'll break it down from there.
Yeah, so thanks so much for the introduction. Pleasure, being on the show here. One of the things I think that separates maybe me from some other folks is that I have always had the willpower to just dig in and make it work no matter what. And sometimes I followed bad plans and still made them work. And so I think if there's anything that defines me, is probably just a relentless spirit to be able to um, not allow obstacles to halt the entire journey, right? So just trying to work around them. I graduated in 2012 from Michigan State University with a degree in kinesiology, which I kind of used as I opened a fitness business and ended up owning a fitness center in Iowa. Ended up selling that fitness center some years later, and that kind of catapulted me. I sold it to a gym chain, and that kind of catapulted me into the next phase, which was real estate and all things real estate at the beginning. I did the shotgun approach and sort of did everything. And then I kind of did the opposite. I started with a wide base of many things, 5, 6 lanes of traffic. And now I'm down to just one lane that I really like. And all the other ones I have abandoned. So that's
There you go. Well, let's kind of break this down. We've got some time to kind of pull this story together.
right.
I also was told that you are or at least you were, I don't know if you still are or how that all works, but were you also a rapper? Do I have
You
that right?
know, at one time I did have some, we had a Spotify hit that got, 7-figure views and,
Wow. All
did
right.
some,
That counts.
did some work with Twista, who was one of Kanye West's kind of people he came up with. And so I did have a song with Twista, and also, I definitely had a lot of, kind of online success with music when I was younger in my 20s, but it's certainly nothing I've done in the last really decade. So,
All right. Very, very cool. That's so it's always fun to see kind of people's origin story. So I want to go back
yeah,
to this gym. So
yeah.
as I understand it, I guess what piqued your interest? Near as I can tell, you probably bought a gym that was underperforming and unloved, but why a gym?
Yeah, so when I was 15 years old, I had a good friend that got me into, physique competitions and weightlifting and things like that. And I just fell in love with it. And I decided he got his personal training certificate. And I said, well, do they allow a 15-year-old to get one? And they did. There was no
Yeah.
rule that you had to be. And so I had a lot of facial hair back then.
Okay.
I got real thick facial hair real fast, and so I always looked a little older than my age. And then once I started working out and beefing up, I could pass for maybe 18, 20 at the best. And so I went to a gym owner at the time when I was a young teenager, and I was like, "Hey, would you let me personal train?" He goes, "Well, yeah, you got to break off some bread for me, but sure." And so I was making 20 an hour in high school.
Wow.
At
Okay.
take home, I think we would charge 30 per session. I would give the gym 10 and I would take 20. And for me, I was happy as a clam to make that
Right.
kind of money. So that's how it got started. I continued in college. I was personal training, on a nearby campus gym at Michigan State.
Okay.
And was able studying kinesiology, which is essentially exercise science. So I was kind of building on the foundation. I had the competition background myself. I had competed, nationally as a teenager, and then basically had the personal training experience, which you learn a lot by teaching, as you know.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
then I also had now the science, the real hard science from a big university. So those three things combined, when I graduated, I was like, I would love to open up a gym, or at least take over a gym, maybe that
Right.
could be more training focused. So what I did is I got away from the gym member model, which I think is a race to zero, more of like a Planet Fitness kind of a model. How are you going
Right.
to compete with that?
Right.
And I said, what about the people who want specialized training, like
Mm,
one-on-one or small group? So we just went hard on that. We were using, social media advertising back before that was really a prominent thing that I think people were doing. Um, and we found a ton of success with like Facebook ads in
mm.
2013, early 2013. There wasn't a lot of competition, especially in Iowa.
Yeah.
Not a lot of Iowa folks using Facebook ads. So you could get reach. At one time, we had more likes than the YMCA on our Facebook page
Wow.
for the local Y. And it's not because we were better. It's just that we were advertising
Yeah. You
all
were
into
putting
that
money
channel.
behind it. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
said, hey, instead of a $39 membership, what about several $100 per month, training membership? Could that work?
Mm,
And so we needed far less clients and we can make a lot of money. It wasn't like
mm.
CrossFit or anything. It was just like a normal gym. It was a 2-story fitness center.
Okay.
And I had various folks that helped that opportunity come to fruition. But it was a great thing for me. Did that for 3 years, sold it to a gym chain, and that's where the kind of the transition took place in about early 2016, late 2015.
So I'm curious how you find an opportunity like that, because it sounds like, if I got the story right, you were still in Michigan at the time,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing you were looking around. I mean, how do you find a gym? Is this your network? Are you going
Yeah.
to Craigslist, or how do you find a gym that's looking to sell?
So I was in Michigan and I was graduating college, right, at Michigan State. And I was going, okay, I took the GREs and did very well on the GRE. So I got into most any grad school that I really applied to, I got in. So we're talking physical. Where do you go with a kinesiology degree? You go physical therapy school to get your doctor of physical therapy. So a
Okay.
DPT, that was one option. Doctor of chiropractic, you can get into schools there. There happened to be a chiropractic school here. And when I was here visiting, kind of going through their little orientation and things that they like you to do. I happened to stumble into this gym and just to work out. I
Mm,
just I just found it and was like, oh, this is cool, and ended up having that turn into a great opportunity pretty organically. I said, I think I can make this work here. I think the demographics are good, and it was only about I say Iowa, and that sounds really far from Michigan, but it was really only like 5 hours and 40 minutes or something. So it definitely was, not too outside of the realm. Actually, there was a lot of similarities in culture to
mm.
to Lansing, Michigan, and the area in Iowa where it was in eastern Iowa on the border of Illinois. So
Okay. All right. Very, very cool. So I'm curious, when you buy a gym, is it like a lot of small businesses? Maybe you got some seller financing. Did you go out and get a small business loan, or what was kind of the structure of that first acquisition?
yeah, what was interesting is they had like this upstairs, I would call it a maybe 1,500 square feet at best area that was not being utilized. And
Hmm.
they had sort of a split level. And I think that they had so much space in that gym, giant gym, giant gym. They had so much space that this excess space wasn't really being used. And I said, hey, I would love to just be a trainer here for the time. Can I build a training business within this business so long as I,
Mm,
can make sure that the members, have memberships and things. And so I was like, hey, also, could I rent that room? They let me rent it for $500, and that was the biggest game changer that I ever had because it gave me a place to sort of build a unique business, and I could bring in some of my own equipment up there, specialty
mm,
equipment. And what we found is there were a lot of men too, but a lot of females that were maybe more in the middle age area. They were a little bit intimidated to go to a gym,
right.
but would they go to like a kind of a more plush carpeted room within a gym? They're not afraid to use the locker rooms in the gym. They just don't want to
Right.
really be out and being seen while they're exercising and being put in compromising positions. So I really did target it toward kind of that beginner, more like fat loss type clientele. Even though I had a lot of competition training and experience, and we did have a competition team that would do figure shows and physique shows. I actually trained Miss Iowa, and actually did for a short time train Madison Keys, who's like a world Nike sponsored tennis champion that plays with Venus and Serena Williams, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, we were very specialized. And I think that, and then over time, the gym business that was sort of attached to us, they they kind of fell on hard times, and one of the partners ended up passing away. And so
Mm.
they were like, hey, this is really the time if you want to step up and buy this thing. And luckily I had saved up enough money to just buy it. I didn't buy
Okay.
the building. I bought all the equipment and, you know, some of the other things. And, you know, sure, I got a deal on it. I think that you know, the financials of such a large facility, they were hemorrhaging money. I mean, I remember the heating and cooling bill on that thing was like that. I think just the utilities and basics was like 2,000 a month or something. And,
Wow.
you know, it's when you get a big facility like that, it's just the
Mm.
numbers are crazy.
Very, very cool. So again, you run this, you're probably growing it year by year. Then it sounds like you get approached
Yeah.
by a bigger chain and they
Yep.
say, hey, we want it, kind of name your price, or what? How did that go down? How'd you sell it?
Yeah, so they had there was this they were I would call them like a regional chain. I think they had like 7 or 8 gyms at the time.
Mm.
And you know, they were looking to build out in the city where I was. And they said, well, is it probably cheaper to buy, you know, get the existing user base? And I think it
Right.
was. I think it ended up being cheaper for them. So as part of the deal, they were building this huge I-74 bridge project, and I knew that my building that I was currently leasing, you know, at some time in the near future was going to be demolished for that.
Mm.
And so one of their contingencies is they said, yeah, we'll buy it, but we need you to basically procure a new location for us to be
Mhm.
able to rent from you. So yeah, we ended up, you know, I found this strip mall just kind of through a realtor friend of mine, and it was pretty run down, but I spent 6 figures on a build out, you know, using bank money. Thankfully, I was able to procure that. And filled up this strip mall and then leased it to the gym, like a $250,000 lease. And then they put money down. And then I continued doing personal training and things. And I had some affiliate locations at the time with other gyms and things. But what I found is that the real estate was really the calling. That was where the future was going to be for me. I didn't want to be a, you know, like a washed up trainer in a gym when I was like, you know, it's just like, oh man.
Oh, I
And
like it.
I was kind of falling, you know, if you do something long enough, it kind of gets old.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
but
For
I
sure.
love, I
All right.
love my clients.
Now, so now you sell it. Now you have your first nice liquidity event.
Right.
Then into your story, you go out and find a 6-lane highway of lots of different opportunities before you find your thing. What what
Exactly.
what what was that? What were those?
Yeah.
What'd you do next?
So on paper, landlording looked amazing to me here. That was sort of my first thing. I said, well, wow, I can just sort of buy, you know, use bank money and buy buildings and then have the tenants pay the mortgage. Why wouldn't I do that?
So
Right.
simple.
Yeah, exactly. I found that the maintenance, you know, could be a lot on those. And so there is success in that. I still own some rentals to this day, and I will keep them. Right. Um, for me, I didn't feel at the time. I don't know if I was a great landlord. I think I
Mm.
was so new to it and so green that I don't know if I was the most effective at cost efficiencies and things like that. So I said, I don't know if I'm adding any value here. So I moved on to, I continued doing that. Then I jumped into some flips, did some flip property. I said, well, that's a good way to generate some big cash events, you know, do some flips. And I did some of that and had success in the rentals, in the flips. You know, I did a little bit of wholesaling, but not as much as some of the other guys. I just sort of, when it came to me, if I already knew the seller, already knew the buyer, I would organically sort of wholesale and create a wedge in the middle. You know, so did that, tried a little bit later on. I did a little bit of tax lien stuff, didn't like that. And then did some regular mortgage lending, promissory
Mm.
notes. And so at this time, I was gravitating, sort of sliding over to these new things. And then the final one that I rested on, the thing that I've really been doing a lot of besides the lending, is like an equity partnership slash joint venture
Mm.
kind of an arrangement where basically I come in as an equity partner. Um, and I'm not just the lender, like I'm doing some vision shaping. I'm working with flippers. I'm working with people that are maybe landlords that are trying to come up with an exit, and or they're trying to patch a hole in their financing for various reasons. And so I'm really coming in. Yes, I did morph, through lending and private lending, but now I'm more on the joint venture. I figured out that there's only one of me. I'm not
Mm,
omnipotent, and I really need to partner with owner operators who are in the trenches, and it's just something that I don't want to be on a job site anymore,
mm,
all day long. It's just not something I'm prepared to do. And I honestly don't love the foreclosure game. I've had to do a few foreclosures, and I'm not a fan of that either. So I found that if I can really, I think I offer more than just money to these
mm,
flippers. And so if I can help them with some, and I don't charge them for this, but if I can help my partners with some vision shaping, and maybe let's try this, and are you sure you want to buy that property, right? And
mhm.
more of as a mentor advisor to my flip clients, I found that I get a lot more repeat business that way. And B, when the hurdle does come up, we can work through it together. Generally, those are the kind of people that I want to work with. So.
Yeah. So let's kind of play. Are you still doing most of this in Iowa? Have you kind of just stayed planted where the gym was, or where are you now?
No, I've been really spread out for about 5 years. I
Mm,
think in the beginning it was a big concentration, within about a 2-hour radius. I had a lot in Peoria, Illinois, and things like that. But no, as time went on, like I'm doing a deal in Missouri this week. I think a couple weeks ago, I bought a couple houses in Alabama on an equity partnership. So there's a lot of, sort of, I would say eastern half of the U.S. is where I concentrate. Just because I get more leads there for some reason. We do more advertising there, so that makes sense.
okay. We're going to start talk about that a bunch, because I think a lot
Sure.
of folks are talking about that. But I want to go back to kind of how you created the seed capital, because again, it sounds like you are investing your own dollars, which become the equity in these deals. Obviously, you had a nice liquidity event after the
Sure.
gym. You've probably had some liquidity events. I guess what is your superpower? Saving and making money, or what would you call your superpower?
Well, so I did leverage myself when I was younger. And so basically, I mean, I had millions owed to the bank and to sellers for a long time, actually. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that can be part of growing.
Mhm,
And I think I don't know that I would have been able to get to scale without that. Um, I chose to pay off all my debt back in 2021, and just go ahead and do everything with my own cash. I
okay.
did that not because it's necessarily better. I did it. It's just a risk tolerance preference that I have.
Mhm,
And so I probably could have been much further by now, from an overall market cap, or valuation or things like that. But I sleep like a baby, and so, having millions in the
know
bank and
thyself.
cash,
Yeah,
know
know
thyself,
thyself.
and the stress levels, when you are that leveraged, stress is a real thing. And
Oh, absolutely.
I had succumbed to some stress related illnesses and things like that when I was in the trenches, when I had hundreds of houses that I was looking after myself.
Right.
And yeah, I didn't have any partners, and so for me it was just a lot on my shoulders. And nowadays partnering with the owner operators is so much better. Yeah, every so often I have to jump in and solve a problem, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. So
So if I were to kind of summarize this story, you went through what I always call it growth phase and chill phase. So you went
yeah,
through a growth phase, pretty much highly leveraged, piling up debt, owed millions of dollars, got to a portfolio that was, over 100 units.
right.
And then at some point you said, you know what? Too much. Then
Yeah,
what you did is you went through what I call chill mode. You evaluated your portfolio, you sold stuff off, you paid debt. At the end of the story, you have a handful of properties owned free and clear and a gob of money. Is that kind of where we got to?
that's right. And that's a position that I like to be in because
There's nothing
um
wrong with it.
and it's one of those things, like, yes, I know what to do to expand. But my overhead is relatively low. I just have a
Sure.
couple employees that I'm down to. Just down to a couple employees. We don't spend hardly anything on advertising these days. And I can do deals mainly with the book of business that I already have. And the cash, it does pay some money to have, when you're having in a money market or something,
Yeah.
you're 4 or 5%.
4 or 5%. Yeah.
And it's relatively safe there, as long as you keep your FDIC limits on
Yeah.
your cash. And so we spread out through many different accounts. But it's nice to know that if I do find one of those once every 5-year deals, that I do have the liquidity to perform on it if I need to. But more than that, it's just to help me sleep. That's all it is.
Yeah, I like it. I'm just curious again, where you are now is a wonderful position. I think everybody would love to be there. But I got to ask, 2021, you could have had 30-year money right around 3%, even if you
Sure.
just did 50% LTV. Do you ever think about that, or you're like, no, dude, I'm good where I'm at. Don't think about it for a minute.
So I think it's not so much as like wrong and right. I think it boils down to like everyone's individual like risk tolerance, right? And also what's their expenses, right? I don't have any kids. I'm not married. And so my expenses are relatively low. I don't. I'm just not a guy who is like flying private and has like
Hmm.
yachts and things. And nothing wrong with any of that. I'm just a simple guy, right? And so
Right.
I don't, I just don't spend that much. Like even when I'm trying to spend on myself, I'm really not a big like toys person, like cars person. And so for me, outside of just basic living expenses, I just don't have a lot to. I mean, I see family a lot and go on trips and do things like that, but I'm not doing like monstrous, international trips or anything. Most of mine are inside USA, and
Hmm.
I've just so I have more than what I could spend with staying within my norm expenses right now.
Nice.
And so I think that keeps me a little bit more. They say Warren Buffett, I don't know if he really did, but I think he held on to that house that he
He did. He
that
still has it.
yeah. And not to say that I'm a little bit more in that camp, but and again, I don't think that anything else is wrong. I think that if I had gone and taken those 3% loans, I think I could have achieved a really good result from that. So I don't think it's wrong. It's just I just chose to do it.
Yeah.
Also from like a health perspective, I really wanted to get I had worked so hard for so long, for a solid decade, and I was like, let me just breathe for a little while and maybe let my mind calm down.
Mm.
At one time I was having pretty severe panic attacks from the
Oh,
stress.
wow.
And when you have those, you feel like you're dying even though you're not. And
Right.
um so that's something that kind of I haven't had a full-blown panic attack since 2019 now. So I'm really
Nice.
really thankful for that. So whatever I did, I guess made it go away. So
No, I mean, clearly know thyself. You did all the right things. I was just
sure.
curious.
Yeah,
That was a once in a lifetime opportunity to get 30
it
year money
was.
at inflation rates.
Oh,
It's
kudos to everybody who who was intentionally going through a a leveraging period and was able to take advantage of those, because what a smart time to do that, especially if you could get them fixed for
yeah,
a long no balloons. Oh my goodness. Yeah,
yeah, crazy, crazy.
that was the key right there.
Yeah. So I am curious, right? Going from having a lot to having these stuff that probably was, I'm going to guess, took you a year, maybe 18 months to go from, stressed out big portfolio to free and clear and a bunch of cash. I mean, what was that timeline like?
Yeah, so I would say the big shift took place from 2020 to 2021. So all
Okay.
the house prices had shot way up through the roof. And, I tell people like a lot of it was work, a lot of it was me being strategic, but a lot of it was just dumb luck.
Dumb
I mean,
luck.
it was just dumb luck. That's why I say don't necessarily do what I did, because I don't know if you'll have the market on your side. If the wind's not in your sails, you're not going to,
Yeah.
boat's not going to go anywhere. And some of the houses, I mean, I was already buying them, right. But then, they were like double, what I got
Mm,
them for. And so it's like, well, when you're doubling up on everything, it's like, if you bought them in 16, 17, 18, and then
right.
you're mid 20 and now they're double, it's like, well, so I think I sold 200 of my houses in 2020. I think that's what I
Wow.
sold.
200 houses in a year.
Yeah, I sold 200 of my houses in 2020, and I think I had about 100 and some change left over that were paid off at that time, and then I had still some pretty sizable cash position. So that was like, I would say 21 was the year that I kind of realized, and I was like, oh wow, like I could really start going hard on private lending even more.
Hmm.
And let's migrate toward something like that so I can have more of the free time. And
Right.
then, private lending over the years has morphed into equity partnerships with owner operators. And that's just a weird little niche. I don't know if you'd call them JVs, but you probably would, like a joint
Yeah,
venture.
probably.
That seems to be where I land.
Yeah. One more question about history, and then I want to talk about what you're
Sure,
doing today.
of course.
What was the team like? Because it sounded like at one time you had 300 units or 300
Yeah.
plus. What was the team on the? Because I can only imagine there was a marketing and acquisition,
Oh yeah.
maintenance. I mean, it's like it was probably a pretty big organization at one point.
It was. I had a building in Davenport, Iowa. I had, I think it was 5 or 6 American employees, and then we had five. I know we had 5 virtual employees that went 40 hours a week each at one point.
Mm,
Um, so I think we had 11 full timers at one point, and that was while I had a management company. So
mm,
I had the 300 and something doors that I had, and then I
right.
also had this like 300 and maybe 50 or 330 other doors for that we
Mm,
were managing for other landlords. And
wow.
between all that, I mean, overseeing 600 something houses, it was like
Jeez.
every day there was a crisis. It's not what's wrong. It's or it's not is
Where?
something wrong. It's
Yeah.
wrong. And so I was
Wow.
having to jump in and play whack-a-mole, and
Ugh.
truly I would have needed probably double the staff for that to go smoothly. Luckily, there was a brokerage out of Peoria that wound up buying my management company. And
Nice.
with it, so I sold that off at it doesn't really cost you anything to build that, because you're just essentially, if you're not advertising much for it, and I didn't, it was mostly organic leads that I had from people. The management company kind of just blew up on its own. And then I never really sunk any money in. It was always making me money. Now, granted, you
Mm,
had overhead employees and things. So some months you would go negative on it, but mostly it was positive. But then, sold it as a chunk off. And
right.
then with it, that really downsized us to where, and then as we shifted out of a lot of the units that I owned, I think even as late as 23, I still think I still had 146 doors. And then
Mhm.
now, as of today, total things, whether it's a loan that I own, a mortgage that I own, or a door that I own, or a joint venture, total things, I think is under 70.
Oh, nice.
So I've
And that
really cut it down, and now we're down to 2 employees total. So it's
nice.
me and 2 other employees, and that's the whole operation. So lean, mean, monster cash position, really, you know, there's not a lot of pressure on me to perform. So if I have, like, for example, I'm going to go down to the ocean and visit family. My mom is down at Gulf Shores, Alabama, and my dad is over there in he's just renting a home there for a vacation spot over in Daytona, Florida. So I'm going to go down for a month or so and just kind of do that. And so I don't want to have to justify having a big overhead and have to be able
Mhm.
to. So those are the kind of reasons why sometimes I'm not in growth mode. Will I ever do it
Alright.
again? Like, would I ever grow again? Maybe,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, you
maybe.
reserve the right. That's what I tell people all
Sure.
the time. I'm in chill mode now, but if 2010, 11, 12 rears its ugly head again,
Right.
yeah, you better believe I'll be back, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this private or this equity JV, whatever we want to call it,
Sure.
just for kind of color. I've when you go out there and you get known in the industry, people want to lend you money, right? Or they want to be a part of what you're doing. So I've only ever taken on debt, right? So in 2010, I was paying 12% interest. Basically, somebody would do the purchase price and I would fund the repairs. 2018 and 19, I was retired and just kind of bored. So I did something called 6 and 20. It was probably the closest thing I've done to a JV where I would borrow the entire purchase price, pay 6% interest, and then I would give them 20% of the upside. But
Love that.
it was all in a note that I had
Okay.
an attorney draft. Um, and again, these were flips, right? I was bored. I think I did 50 plus flips. I'm curious. I just I guess I'm curious why equity? Is it just because you can have more control and influence
It
or what?
is. It is.
Okay.
I have found that, there's even when I did some regular, mortgages and promissory notes, which I did many of, it was harder for me to nurture that
Mm,
deal and make sure that they weren't making decisions that were awful.
Dumb decisions. Yeah.
And I always tell people, like, we're on the same team here. We both want to make this work. We both want to make money, and I want you to do more deals with me, right? And so, um, with the vision shaping component, it helps when I'm really in the
Mm,
trenches with the on the control side. Now I give them a lot of free reign. But there are some times when I'm like, hey, you need to, we need to get something done here. Also, the other nice thing is sometimes they fail, right? So sometimes
yeah.
they run out of cash and they fail and X, Y, and Z, and so I'll jump in and save it sometimes, and
Mm,
instead of just doing a foreclosure and making it nasty, I'll jump in, save it. Everyone makes money, and then we do another deal.
mm.
So it's like
Okay.
I do like that component of it. I do like to be more involved, on things. What I have found also, I'll tell you one reason why I like getting away from the mortgages and promissory notes a little bit. If you give somebody a loan, even if you get lender's title insurance, right? If you give somebody a loan and they have some sort of an IRS lien that happens after that,
Yeah.
people don't know this. Many don't, but IRS liens and government liens like that are called super liens,
Yep.
and they don't care if you were there first. They don't
Yeah.
care. They say, we don't care, and if you don't like it, men with guns. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And so it's like it's like
We win.
we win. Yeah, you will not win that fight. And so I also had that happen one time where I had a couple of properties, and this young man had not paid his taxes, and they finally hit him with a six-figure lien.
Ugh.
Now I've got to hold these daggone properties for 10 years until that
Wow.
lien falls off. And it's like, I didn't want to be in this deal for 10 years. I'm the short term
Right.
guy. I like 6 months or less usually.
Right.
So I learned my lesson there. Sometimes you have pain is the best teacher.
Yeah, amen to that. Yeah. So again, it sounds like these equity positions you just said are all short term. So you're mainly doing with flippers, or maybe helping somebody with a burr project, and you get paid out on the burr side.
Yeah, so it tends to be more flippers, not as much with the rental properties, although we have done some. I actually just did a new deal with some rental properties in St. Louis. Helped a couple. They had three rental properties in St. Louis, and they were having a liquidity problem, and they didn't have the financials to go to a bank. Maybe their taxes weren't up to date or what have you. So I jumped in on those three properties, and we came up with a plan, like, what's the exit here? Like, how am I getting paid back? And it turns out they had another project that was going to pay off soon. They just needed somebody in the interim to
Okay.
basically help them figure that out. So we did that. Sometimes I'll do draws. If it's like a flipper, we'll
Mhm.
do some sort of a draw schedule. Other times it doesn't make sense to do that. And I'll do very small deals too. I'm doing one, and you're going to laugh at this one. I'm doing one in Missouri. I can't even remember the town because it's so small.
Mm.
But he would have had a hard time going to a bank. He only needs like 35 grand.
Okay.
And so it's
Yeah.
like banks don't even want to mess
No.
with that.
Sub 50, it's not worth it. Dodd-Frank, not worth it.
No. And so I've got, like, as far as an equity partnership, that kind of makes sense. And so I'm looking at it going, he only needs 35 grand to finish a flip that he is like 2/3 of the way done with. And I've seen that, I've video chatted with him. We walked the property. And so, like, I tell everybody, if I'm not making 5 grand on something, I'm not doing it. That's
Okay.
my minimum that I have to make on any transaction, whether it's only a 3 month thing and you only need 30 grand, whatever it is. I got to make 5 grand. Otherwise, it's like, it probably cost me 2 grand just to process something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think another reason that people do use us is because we're not afraid to do the smaller deals too. Like, we'll do some of the smaller
Nice.
stuff. So yeah, we've done some really large deals, multi-million dollar ones, but I actually shy away from those a little bit. I go more into my niche is probably somewhere between 70 and 250. Somewhere in there. And that lends itself to states that are going to be more like Rust Belt,
Mhm.
Midwest. And so I think we do get more leads in those kind of states. And those are generally on the, central and kind of eastern part of the US. maybe not the coast, not New England, but we do get a
Right.
lot in those kind of areas. We don't see a lot of. I've done a deal in California, but we just don't get a lot out there in the West Coast because the property values are so high, and I don't love having all my eggs in one
Yeah.
basket over there. So
Yeah. So, obviously I have a very large audience. Lots of them are investing in states and areas that you probably are very familiar with. Who is your avatar, right? Who would you want to reach out to you and have a conversation?
sure, I would say like, my main customer is probably like a flipper, possibly a landlord or somebody who's just really looking for. They're not so concerned with like they're not rate shopping, right? They're not like,
Right.
oh, is it splitting hairs between is it this percent or this percent? Why use me? I'm faster than anyone else. I don't do appraisals. I don't do upfront fees, right? On these equity partnerships, you avoid all those things. You're working with me direct. There's no middle guy, right? And so when you get a wire, it's from my bank account is wiring in. That's it. There's no other intermediary. I'm the decision maker. We're such a small shop that I can make the decision, so you don't have to go through all the
Mhm.
bureaucracy and underwriting and things. I can very quickly decide if I want to do a deal or not. Also, you do get some experience benefit. Will you pay a little more? Maybe, but then you don't have the fees up front. You don't have the
Mhm.
overhead. And you're only paying me when you get paid. So that's kind of, I would say that's the avatar. Somebody who's kind of more of that mindset. They're looking at the bigger picture. They're not just like rate shopping and splitting hairs and things. I can tell you if you do deals with me long enough, we'll figure out how to make you money. So
Yeah. I think that one statement you made there, I think is the big aha for me is you only get paid when they get paid, right? You're not getting a little draw or drip on a mortgage payment or something monthly. It's like, hey, we all eat together,
exactly.
at the end.
We're
Yeah.
all in the
So
same boat.
what is a typical, I don't know what you want to call it, equity split, or is it all, do you have a standard, or is it just all deal by deal?
What I usually do is I usually cap myself at a certain amount of money that I can make from the deal, and I give them all the upside because I want to be very
Okay.
fair to them so that they can want to come back and do more deals with me. I don't want to seem so expensive or so greedy on a single deal that then don't get the repeat business. So, like,
Got it.
let me just tell you about the one that I helped those landlords do over in
Okay.
St. Louis. So I gave them 150,000, no draws. I just gave it to them. And they had three properties that they had. Now they didn't have loans on them, but they were properties that were probably a little bit harder to get financing on. They weren't very high dollar properties. I don't know how well they would have appraised. And so I gave them $150,000. And our equity partnership states that when the properties sell within a 6-month period, the most that I can make is 20 grand.
Okay.
So they make everything on top of that. This deal, I knew the area in St. Louis. I knew these properties were worth probably double that if they were sold correctly and the finishes on them were real good. And so that was the kind of the hope. And so I know they're going to make way more than me. And that's okay. It doesn't
Yeah.
even though I'm putting up the lion's share of the money, I don't need the lion's share of the profit. I'm just looking to hit singles and doubles. I don't need home runs. So that's kind of the situation. It's just a different structure. It's not better than a mortgage. It's not better than a bank. It's just apples and oranges. They
Different.
both
Yeah,
they
it's
both taste
different.
good. Yeah,
Yeah. So again, kind of they reach out to you, you evaluate the deal, you do some walkthroughs to check current condition. You think the value is worth 300, so 150 is safe.
sure.
You send them 150. Their job is to complete the renos or remodel or whatever it is in the 6-month period.
Right.
They sell, you get 170, they keep everything else.
You got it.
What happens if they miss the time frame?
So what we do is I always tell people this because their number one fear is, well, if you're on equity, I don't want you to be able to take the house from me. I said, look, first of all, no offense, but I don't want it.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Let's be clear. I don't want
let's be
it.
clear. Please don't give it to me. I don't want it.
Right.
Secondly, though, what we do is if they go past the deadline, let's say that 20 grand, whatever it
Mhm,
was, divide that by 180 days, and
mhm.
it just turns into a day rate as they go over.
Okay, that makes sense.
The difference that happens, I tell them this. What will happen is once they exceed the deadline, it doesn't mean that I'm going to come after them and slit their throat. What it means is I will step in and help them figure out, is it a marketing problem? Is it
Mm,
a price problem? Is it a combination of the two? Is there more renovation that needs done? in order to get it sold. Why isn't it selling? And
Right.
my challenge to them is every couple of weeks, you need to show me some definitive efforts toward changing something, because insanity, the definition is, doing the same thing. So if we're changing something every couple of weeks and I can see definitive efforts in one way or another to get the thing sold and get me paid back, I will
Mm,
allow that day rate to continue. It's only when someone is doing nothing for an elongated period of time and I am seeing no improvement that I might step in. And again, I don't make any more money. I mean, I get my little day rate. Who cares about that? That's pennies. So I just want to be able to keep my money as liquid as possible. And that's why I like
right.
the 6-month thing. I want the money to be not too far away from me at any given time. Like you said earlier, what if we do encounter a generational buying market? I want the liquidity to be able to execute. And I don't want to
Yep.
have all my cash tied up for years and years. And gosh forbid we have another inflationary event or a hyperinflation. I need to be able to turn that cash into something that isn't fixed, a
Yep.
fixed thing. And the way I do these JVs, yes, it's a good return, but it is fixed. And if we
Yep.
have something, if I need to jump into precious metals or some inflationary thing, I need to be able to do that and have the liquidity. So.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to guess there's a lot of people watching this that want to know more. Blake, where do we send them? Where do we send them
Sure.
to learn more about this?
Yeah, I've still got my old website, selbyrentals.com. We never rebranded because most of the people that do business with me already know me. But selbyrentals.com, good old selbyrentals.com is where you can go. And there's just a very simple website. You can type in your information and with a question or anything you want to get to know. And that's the easiest place to find me.
Well, I'm just creating a banner and let's see if I got this right. Am I spelling
Perfect.
it correctly?
You nailed it.
Oh, I cheated. I copied your last name and I can type rentals. So
Sure.
folks, if you want to know more about this, selbyrentals.com. Send him a note. Tell him you saw it on One Rental at a Time, just so he knows his time was valuable here. Well, let's close it out with this. What would be your message to millennials that think it's impossible to get rich in today's environment? Because obviously you are a millennial and a multimillionaire. So what's your closing thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've traveled overseas in the past. I've been to Egypt and Sudan and some of these areas. I spent several weeks over in that area. And the opportunities that we have in the Western nations, they're truly limitless compared to what everyone else has. If you do take massive action, even if it's a bad plan, you'll find out, and it's okay to fail forward fast and pivot. Just start doing stuff. And if it's not working, then do something else, but do instead of not doing. The difference
Yeah.
between doing and not doing is massive.
Do the work, folks.
Do the
Do
work.
the work. Blake, you're amazing, man. Take care. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you, buddy.